Well, I had some things that I had to take care of before I did the live stream tonight. Yeah, I would have been at Chatterday otherwise, but thank you. Just a quick check. Can you hear me? Awesome. Thank you very much. So far, you're our only viewer. We got so feel free to ask away any questions you have. What were the topics being discussed during Chatterday today? I can't say I'm familiar with that one. Oh, okay. Something goidelic. Yes, Satone likes to talk about his various systems, some of which are pretty abstract. So he was talking about something based on beads, and it drifted to Ogham. Well, that would make sense. I would also imagine something based on beads would maybe look a little bit like Kipu. Who knows? Were the beads different colors, or is it just numbers of beads separated by knots, or ah, that's the thing in Chatterday. Sometimes images are shared, but most of the time it's just people discussing things. Yeah, color in a writing system can be tricky. You have people with synesthesia, you have people with various color, uh, visual color recognition issues. I know people with the inability to distinguish uh, like red and orange from each other, things like that. So you have to be careful with color. Yeah, I can't say I'm immediately familiar with a West African alphabetic script. West African alphabetic and syllabary. Benin Edo, Oracle Rainbow script. Ah, okay. I think I found the Benin color script thing. It seems interesting. I can't say I've really looked into it myself. Ukwegbe? Something. Ukwegbe, I think. Ah, okay. Yeah, there's different systems used in Malawi, I believe. There's more than one. Yeah, you're going to have the Chichewa, the Lambia, because there's different divergent uh, dialects. Most of the ones I'm finding are just romanizations, though. Yeah, according to the count, we have 4 viewers, but you're the most verbose. Oh, uh, hello, Jennifer. What's my favorite neography? Um, Probably that's a tough one. I don't know what my favorite neography is. There's so many. Some are good based on the way they look, and others are good based on the way they work. And then there's those that are good for both. You made a parody today, Matthew. Which parody was that? It could be cool if I sang it. Okay. Uh, which one looks the best? Well, I'm kind of partial to a Yeri, or should I say to Tahano Hikamu, which is used to write the Conlang Ayeri. I don't know any Chapel Rome. I'm sorry. I don't do any. I can't do parodies that well. Lang's Frog Pond, you asked, are there any new interesting developments in Kala? Not specifically, but I have been working on some vocabulary. Been falling short on some of that. Yeah. Broccoli to the tune of Hot to Go. Yeah, I don't know any Chapel Rome. Ayeri is very pretty. Yes, Jennifer, I agree. Lang's Frog Pond, I have been considering adding some more glyphs to the logography, but lacking some inspiration there. So I'm letting it ruminate for a while, marinate. Anytime there's developments there, though, I usually put it on my blog, so you'll see it linked somewhere. Matthew, that's an excellent question. There are 1,116 canonical glyphs used. There are some modifying symbols as well. And not all the glyphs are read in only one way. Some of them have multiple readings based on context, similar to kanji, but it's more grammatical context or word formation rather than just a reading of. But that's a good question. Jennifer's asking, how long is this live going on? I had planned it for an hour, but if there isn't much interest, I'll cut it short. If there's more interest, I'll leave it up. And do the sound doesn't change? Well, that's an odd question, but I'll try to answer it. Yes, the sound does change. I'll give you an example. So the sound does change, yes. Let's see here. I just so happen to have a copy of my dictionary up, so I'm going to share my screen with you. All right. So I'll zoom in and I will go to the reading of glyphs. That's not it, actually. I don't always have this open. Contextual reading. There we go. All right. So this is answering Matthew's question. As you can see here, some of the glyphs serve multiple roles, meaning they have a full use as a noun, verb, or as both, but they may also be used as particles and or affixes. So if you look at the example column B, the first one is village plus person. So it is read as kamako, meaning villager or townfolk. The second one down, this one here, is village plus large plus person. So kamahatlo, meaning urbanite or city folk. And then the third one there in column B is big person. Yeah. So tahako, meaning large person. Now you can see this glyph is taha and this glyph is tlana, but when you put them together, it's tahako. So the sounds do in fact change. I hope that answers your question. Just 1 second here. That is an excellent question. That's an excellent question, Lang's Frog Pond. Frog Pond. uh, Football bats and more. Football bats is a military phrase to describe a situation that is completely out of whack. Because in football, obviously, they do not use a bat, they use a baseball bat. So a football bat is something completely unnecessary and all messed up. And the name of my Tumblr, which I haven't really used much lately, is soup sandwiches, which is also another military term to describe a situation that is completely not the way it's supposed to be. It's messed up beyond all recognition. It's upside down, inside out, backwards, all of that. Soup sandwiches. Oh, we have another viewer. Not sure who it might be. Uh, what's my favorite poem? Uh, oh, that I ever wrote. If you give me a minute, I'll remember it word for word. I can't remember it. If you hadn't asked me, I'd be able to remember it. But it's the one that I wrote for a young lady about a nap, a dress, a snack, and then a mess. Something like that. Oh, thank you. Oh, I did not go the way I wanted it to. So let's do this window. There we go. Nice. Since Matthew asked, and since Lang's Frog Pond is at least mildly interested, I'll show you some things here. So when it comes to, oh, here we go. Do you do most of your work on writing systems digitally or on paper? That's a beautiful question, and that is the kind of question I was hoping for this evening. So I typically will sketch things out in a notebook on paper, usually starting with a pencil and then working my way up either to a calligraphy pen or a marker, depending on the kind of system that I'm making. And then once I have built up at least some foundation of the system, then I'll try to create it digitally. Whether I use a program to make calligraphy or something of that nature, or whether I just sketch it out in a digital program like Microsoft Paint or some other program and then transfer it to an image document. Um, it really depends on the script type. Um, some of my oldest work is work that I did exclusively on paper and then later scanned or learned how to do calligraphy on certain programs online. Jennifer's asking, how do? How do what? I don't. I don't know how to answer that. So to expand a little bit on my answer to Lang's Frog Pond, this stuff you see here on the screen in the left column there, the Omyatloko column, this is all done on computer. In the Yatoyo or the middle column, um, I did make some brush strokes online, or excuse me, on paper, and then I scanned them in, and then I manipulated them in images to uh, create the look that you see. And the whole goal is to try and make it look handwritten. Some of it didn't come out perfectly, like the way I wanted it to, but it came out, I think, well enough to drive the point home that the left column being representative of epigraphic or something that's etched into stone or wood, the middle column being what the handwritten version might look like. And then on the right side there, you see the quote unquote typed version. And that's just pixelated in Microsoft Paint. Uh, it it's tedious, but it's easy to do. Um, how do you make the orthography for the neography? Okay, that that's not a real question. Orthography is how a language represents itself in writing. Neography is a new system of writing. So you're not really asking a legitimate question. You don't make an orthography for the neography. That's not a thing. so so we'll look at this one now. This is my oldest system, and Lang's Frog Pond. I think you're still on. If you are, what you see here, I did this on an app on a tablet. It's a Zen brush kind of stroke app, and I wrote it out there on that, and then I transferred it to this Word document, and it literally just spells out Moya, meaning writing. Um, and as you can see, some of the older versions here, especially if I zoom in a little bit, these were done on paper with a calligraphy pen and then scanned in. Um, this was also done with a calligraphy pen. This one was not done that way. Number 4 was done on a tablet and then by pieces. I did the pieces of the characters one by one and then put them together in an image program. Number 3 there, this was done uh, with a calligraphy pen. Again, I did it in pieces and then I put the characters together. Okay. I think we lost Lang's Frog Pond. Oh, okay. Perfect. Oh, Have a good night, Jennifer. Thank you for coming. I appreciate your questions. So, still open for questions here. Anybody has anything they want to discuss? A couple of the videos coming up. Um, Heptapod B will be dropping on the 11th of April. My IthQuil review will be uh, coming up on the 25th of April. And then a collection of sci-fi ciphers on May 9th. Yes, I would recommend H.P. Lovecraft, Matthew. I think that that is a wonderful uh, recommendation. Well, Lang's Frog Pond, um, I'm not sure what you mean by nonlinear writing. Can you give me a name of a script that is nonlinear? And when we talk about a nonlinear writing system, we have to be very careful that we're talking about the system and not the grammar of the language, because it is possible to have a less than linear or nonlinear grammar while very much using a linear writing system. One of the issues that happens with conlangers especially is they conflate writing with grammar and language with writing. Writing is not language. Language is not writing. So one can be linear and the other not. ASL is nonlinear both as a system of spelling. It's not a system of writing, it's a system of spelling, right? But it is nonlinear as a system of spelling, and grammatically, it is also nonlinear. But that's ASL. By the broadest definition of nonlinear, Braille is considered nonlinear, while the language that it is, I shouldn't say it that way. I should say, while most languages that it is used to transcribe do have mostly linear grammars. So there's some sort of spectrum in there, right? But a writing system is not directly or immediately representative of the grammar of a language. In fact, the minute that we say a writing system is either linear or nonlinear, we are sort of boxing ourselves in and being somewhat prescriptive, right? Because there's arguments to be made that the Latin alphabet in its original use was somewhat nonlinear, or at least certain versions of it were. Writing in different directions, writing vertically, these kinds of things. But again, it's not a binary choice. It's a spectrum of whether something is written in a line or written in consecutive lines or in connected lines. So writing, the definition for nonlinear for writing is slightly different than the definition for nonlinear when you're talking about grammar. Sandwich artist Tony, welcome. Hello. Are there any scripts that have particularly influenced your work over the years more than any other? That's an excellent question. I would say most likely East Asian systems. I'm very much a fan of Hansa, but uh, its complexity is slightly overwhelming to newer learners. I have tried to learn as much as I can, but I found myself kind of veering more towards the syllabaries and the apagitas because they're much easier to learn, much quicker to learn those. And once you do learn those, it's much easier to learn those languages. I thought Thai was an intimidating language, and it can be. But once I learned the origin of the Brahmic scripts and I saw how they're all sort of interrelated there and very derivative, uh, trying to learn a little bit of Thai was a little easier. Learning things like Korean became a lot easier because you can sort of see how the characters are related, and then you understand phonologically and sort of maybe even grammatically, depending on the relationship between the different languages. Uh, oh, um, what sci-fi neographies will I be covering in the series? It's not a series; it's one video, but that's still a good question. And it comes out on May 9th, and it goes over the Futurama cipher, which, if anybody's ever watched the cartoon Futurama, you'll notice sometimes there's a sign in a cipher, sort of a different alien-looking alphabet. um, the second show was a show, it was a movie, and then it was a show called Alien Nation. The aliens were called newcomers, but their language was called Tanktonese, and their writing system sort of looked like a pulse on a pulse monitor, boop, 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 with other little dashes. And then the third one is V. It was a mini series and then a TV show when I was very young in the 80s about lizards who come to Earth and they dress up like humans. They wear masks to look human. Um, and when you see the review of those scripts, you'll understand it's the silly 80s. And even the Alien Nation show, I think that was early or mid to late 80s. They didn't put a lot of effort into it. Futurama, they put a lot of effort into it, which is weird because it's just a cartoon for teenagers. But you'll see when you watch the review. Um, Back to what you were asking though, Langs Rock Bond. Um, the one script when I looked at all the Brahmi scripts and The one that really jumped out to me was Tibetan. I really like Tibetan a lot. And if you look closely at the script on screen, uh, you'll probably be able to tell that that was pretty influential here. Yes, Hangul is easy until you get to the Batchim, but once you learn that it's basically the plosives, the nasals, and then L, you're good. That's it. The plosives, the nasals, and then L. That's you don't have to worry about anything else. That's what the sound will result in, one way or the other. And most of the time, it's T. So I don't really talk about this one much, but because it was kind of experimental when I started doing it. Um, maybe you could say it's kind of weak. Um, I'm not super proud of it, but it's interesting nonetheless. It just means circle script, and you'll see why here in a second. Um, zoom in there, give you a better look. As you can see here, there's an inner circle and an outer circle. The outer circle is used for an affix. Oh, no worries, sandwich artist. Um, when we get down here, you'll see how the syllables are broken down. You even put a little IPA in there so that you can understand what it is you're reading. Prenasalization is marked with this little hook that comes off the top of the character. And then the virama, you can take them out, take out the vowels, so you got your final k, and n. This is how you mark your vowels. The front vowels are marked on the vertical axis. Back vowels are marked on the horizontal axis. Then you got your diphthongs, closing diphthongs, pi and pow. And then you got your opening and opening diphthongs and triphthongs, etc. And you can see those are just combinations of these above. And this is what it looks like without the circles. And then here you get like a little readout of how to put them together. This top left one here is the most basic. As you can see, the outside is the pa, the inside is the ka. There are no markings on this. Then up here you see the U. It's on the right side of the horizontal axis. I think it looks like it, but I on all things holy, I made this before I knew about the unknown from Pokemon. I'm not even being funny. I had no idea that that existed when I made this script. Um, um, Pakyo, Panka, so you get the sense that the pa and the ka are always present, and then you just mark accordingly, right? And then we get some examples here, and you'll see it can be written horizontally here, or it can be written in vertical stacks. I like the vertical version better. Um, Artist Tony says, unknown from Pokemon. When I got done designing this and started making examples, I also sort of thought it looked a little like the Borg symbols from Star Trek. the way they stack. They're green, but you get the point. And here's a longer sample. Um, Probably one of the things I like least about this, even though I like it, is the angular sections that look like something was cut out of it, but that is a result of stacking uh, based on the entire circle. So each word or syllable is stacked on a circle. And when you do it that way, the ones that don't formulate either three-quarters of a circle or at least one half vertical, one half horizontal, depending on what's above it or below it, then you get these sections that look like they're just hollow. I don't necessarily think that that would cause issues with reading because you're still looking circle, 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 circle. And if you look closely, even where there's those empty spaces, that's the circle you're reading. Then you read this one, then this one, then this one, right? So I don't think it would cause issues necessarily with reading, but overall, I don't like the finished product. Now, if it was on some sort of different color background, on a piece of paper, like maybe a piece of brown paper or parchment or something, it might look a little different. It might be a little easier on the eyes. But black on white like it is, those empty spaces, they bother me. We get a different here sample, still pretty long, but horizontal. When you do it horizontal, you get less of those empty space um, occurrences, unless you have stacked lines like right here. But it's also a consequence of some of the features, as in here, the I think that's which syllable is that? That might be ma. I think yeah, I think that's ma. So when you have just a open syllable like that, or monosyllable, but yeah, this is my oldest system here. First created in mid 1999. By the end of 2000, I pretty much had the basic shapes figured out. The thing is, it wasn't originally used for this language. It was originally used for a different language, and I based the number of glyphs on that language. And it just so happened when I started working on Kala that I ended up with a similar number of base phonemes. So I was able to adapt this to Kala. I didn't adapt Kala for this. Um, when I started with Kala, I already had sort of a working idea of the glyphs. I wasn't sure what I wanted the final design to look like, but I knew I wanted some sort of logo syllabary or logography. Um, yeah, I really wasn't sure what it would end up looking like. Um, as you can tell, maybe you can tell from the left column there, um, Mayan was a heavy influence. Um, this system, though, I actually figured this out later, sort of reverse engineered this from the glyphs. Um, and I like this part of this system the best. This is probably my favorite aspect of the glyph system is that you can articulate, you can spell out how to write each glyph, which means you could probably, if I wanted to, I could also very easily create a manual system to describe each glyph, i.e., something similar to a sign language. So I could manually spell what a glyph looks like to someone. And then they could, if they were also vision impaired, they could also run their hand across a raised glyph. And based on my manual spelling, into their palm know exactly which glyph they were reading. And then I could describe, using that same manual system, I could describe what the glyph represents. So this wasn't just for me to be like, okay, how do I write each glyph? This was a way to be able to impart the system to auditorily and visually impaired people. Of course, you could make the argument that any system, if it was raised, uh, a visually impaired person could run their fingers across it and get a sense of what it looks like, or get a sense of what it is, how it's designed. Um, but unless you can also manually spell it to someone who is uh, hearing impaired, it it doesn't really track all the way. It's got to be both in my mind, from my perspective. And here's one of the longer samples of the glyphs, the handwritten version. Some of this has changed because the grammar has been updated since I first created this sample, but not by much. And a few of the glyphs might have changed. There might have been a glyph or two that were updated. So in that sample, you might see a couple of syllables that you could now represent with glyphs, and vice versa. Because sometimes after using a glyph once or twice for a word or a concept, if I didn't like the way it looked in combination with its most common companions, then I might just say, you know what, I'm going to use the syllables for that. And if anybody's curious, this part was the part that took the longest. Not designing the symbols, but figuring out how to order them, what collating order, like what the alphabetical order was going to be. This was the most difficult part. Um, do you go by strokes? Do you do shapes, sizes? How do you order them? And ultimately, I had to create an entire primary component system. Now, the designs were initially based on Hanzi, as you can see on the screen, but I had to decide which one was going to go first, and then which sub component or sub thing to collate it by. Just like you have in any dictionary, you have the first letter of the word, but then you have the second letter of the word, right? So what's the second part? So you see there, it says they're listed in the handwritten style, first by the component, then the positional radical. And so if you look here, the component is gate, which you see there. And then the positional radical is meow. And that just means that it goes across the top and down the left side. And that the gate, the small version of the gate, is in the lower right quadrant of each one. Once you start looking like that in the lower right quadrant of each glyph and noticing that it's just the gate in different directions, it suddenly becomes clear what myo means. Myo is the top and left side. And just for comparison's sake, if we scroll down here to the ta positional radical, and then you remember what the large gate looks like, yeah, looks like a door or a gate. As you can see here, ta just means the left side. And then on the right side, you'll see up, right side up or upside down door. Just that simple. And so the simplicity of it all is what eluded me for the longest time. What was the simplest way to not just compose the glyphs, but how to order them in a coherent way that allows me to keep track of them, but also allows the viewer to distinguish them, right? Because it's not just for yourself. If you're going to publish this online, you want other people to see it. You want other people to be able to comprehend your work and see what you've made. The best way to do that is to do it in a simplistic, or at least a commonly deducible way. And by having the positional radicals, it gives the viewer the opportunity to better understand. Create your dream language, best sound, best writing, best glyphs slash visuals. Wow, that is something else. Let me tell you. I have seen quite a bit online that makes me skeptical of such a thing being possible. But if you could take the sounds of Spanish or Arabic and devise a system that was as beautiful as cursive hiragana, uh, I think that would probably be right up there. Um, something something that sounds flowy, something that writes flowy, but also is, what's the word I'm looking for? Easily distinguishable when spoken, when heard or read. I think is probably the way I would say that. But that's a good question. Thank you. And again, you can see here with this, with nya and chua. Have you ever created a dedicated tactile system for a conlang? No, but I did sketch one out. Um, and not to be too silly about it, but it looked a lot like what you see on screen. The idea was I was going to take, at the time, I had studied Braille for, I don't know, 6 months, a year maybe, and I was going to take Braille and extend it. It was before I realized, before I knew and was able to locate and find that there is such a thing already, extended Braille. There's even an international Braille, which when I found that, I was stupefied. It's really amazing. Um, but the idea was to create connected dots in a certain way that were easily distinguishable from one another. You'll notice I keep coming back to this phrase about being easily distinguishable. Um, Writing systems can get a little too overcrowded, a little too ornamental sometimes, and I think that's a mistake that a lot of neographers make, especially in their first or second attempt. They want it to be pretty, they want it to be flowery, they want it to be very ornate, and that can be detrimental to the overall ease of learning it or appreciating it even. If I can't make heads or tails of what I'm looking at, I'm probably not going to spend too much time on it. You know what I mean? I think that's a pretty common thing among folks. But yes, a dedicated tactile system. I mean, what you're looking at on screen could easily be made into a dedicated tactile system. Um, would I want it to be? Maybe not. Maybe not. But it could be. But again, like I was saying, you can see here, nya obviously means on the top of it. Chua obviously means on the bottom of it. Once you look through there. Um, so again, it was about making distinguished or distinguishable symbols that could be collated and arranged in such a way that the viewer can make heads or tails of it. Probably the funniest part about all three of these to me is this one being my oldest one. I still have to look at the chart to write it. uh, Whereas with the glyph system, I have most of it, not the logos, but the syllable part of it, I have pretty well memorized. Sandwich artist Tony is asking, I always liked the Shavian alphabet. I think we should all learn to speak Latin and write in Chinese Hanzi. That would be beautiful, methinks. That is certainly an opinion. I will acknowledge that as a bona fide opinion. Yes. Uh, Shavian is definitely something that is out there. That is for sure. I find it odd, though, that you're saying you like Shavian, but we should learn to speak Latin and write Chinese Hanzi. Are you suggesting writing Latin with Chinese Hanzi? Et in Arcadia ego. And what does that mean, Matthew? I don't speak Latin. No hablo Latino. Oh, I contain multitudes. Nice. Nice. Ah, okay. So, Lang's Frog Pond is saying, revive Tongoot. I would like to see that. Okay. Arcadia being utopia and the I referring to death. All right. Um, Tongoot is one of those ones that's a little overly complex for my tastes because it's not exactly logographic and it's not exactly syllabic. It's trying kind of too hard to be either and both all at the same time. That's my opinion. Uh, yeah, but I do like the overall aesthetic of it. Just so we're clear, I like the way it looks. I just think it's a little too much all at once. Some of the differences between the glyphs is just the angle of one stroke. And when you have thousands of characters, that distinction matters. So, all right. Um, so I'm coming up on the end of this hour. I wanted to thank everybody who joined. Thank you for the excellent questions. Please feel free to reach out to me on Discord or Blue Sky. I am on all of that. Um, and if you have questions later, feel free to put them on the YouTube uh, version of this. I'm going to leave it up. So hope everybody enjoys the rest of your weekend. And thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it.